Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Rabbi israh li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Assalamu alaikum and shukran for everyone who's taken the time out to be here today. I appreciate en ons Afrikaanse taal raadgaste baie dankie. Ons waardeer wat julle ook gekom het vandag. En natuurlijk vandaag, we gaan sommer met deur in die huisval vandag, we gaan natuurlijk Afrikaans praten, we gaan natuurlijk meestal Engels praten voor zo'n jonge mensen wat natuurlijk na die wat gaan kijken op YouTube en zo. En om zo met die deur in die huis te vallen, omdat die nou rechtstreeks uitgesaai wordt, this is a live broadcast of course, and because this is a live broadcast, I'll make use of this opportunity to introduce this version of Afrikaans. You know, in South Africa there are various Afrikaans linguistic. Okay, can you hear me now? Okay. Across South Africa, there are various Afrikaans-speaking communities, and each of these communities speak a version of Afrikaans that differs from the other. And each of these communities speak a dialect that differs from the other. And normally these communities are divided into three groups of people. And one of the groups, they know what they call Oostgrens Afrikaans, basically it is Boer Afrikaans, Voortrekker Afrikaans. The second group, of course, is what they call Oranje Rivier Afrikaans. Oranje Rivier Afrikaans is a Khoi Afrikaans. And under Khoi Afrikaans, you get so many sub-dialects of Khoi Afrikaans. And the last category is Kaaps. But there's one category of one variety of Afrikaans that very few people know about and hardly speak about. And that is Cape Moose Afrikaans. And since this is a live broadcast, I'll make use of this opportunity to introduce this variety of Afrikaans to the rest of the Afrikaans-speaking community at large, in the rest of South Africa as well. So to start off immediately with what exactly is Afrikaans, Cape Moose Afrikaans, since so many people, very few people outside the Cape, they have no clue, they never heard about Cape Moose Afrikaans. They don't even know what it sounds like. So the best way to explain something is to give an example. So I'll start off with an example of what Cape Moose Afrikaans sounds like for people outside who've never heard about Cape Moose Afrikaans. And it goes something like this. So I met a friend of mine and I invited him to go to a function with me. And we spoke in Cape Moose Afrikaans and he said vir my, nee man, ek sal ek kan gaan nie, ek gaan mos na Gaza, en my Yusuf se honde daar. Ek moet nou nie poase gaan maningel. Nogal in se boek so wak toe. In feite was nogal 'n paar dae net voor hulle barring. In feite was die oggend na Lailatul Qadr. Hy net klaar gesouer, roep bange Bilal. Hy geneem toe abdas en maak sy salam en in sy tweede rakat, in sy sujud, kry sy azal. As you can hear in this last sentence, only in this last sentence, all the foreign loanwords, hy net klaar gesouer, roep bange Bilal. Hy geneem toe abdas, hy maak sy salam en in sy tweede rakat, in sy sujud, kry sy azal. No, that is Cape Moose Afrikaans. And due to all these foreign loanwords, Cape Moose Afrikaans is not always understandable to the rest of the Afrikaans-speaking community. It's a unique language. It's almost like a foreign language to other varieties, speakers of other varieties of Afrikaans, because they do not understand this variety of Afrikaans. That's how unique it is. So to break down exactly to give a bit of explanation of what Cape Moose Afrikaans is, I'll just break it down. The first thing that differs from makes Cape Moose Afrikaans different from other varieties of Afrikaans is all the foreign loanwords. They are mostly Malay loanwords and Arabic loanwords. In typical Malay loanwords, of course, is what we call tamav, kanala, tramakasi. We say bacha, pujis, pafampuaza, puka, labarang, khamaningal, and so many words. But these are the typical Malay loanwords in the Cape Muslims' everyday vocabulary. Then, of course, there are also many Arabic loanwords in the Cape Muslims. Arabic loanwords such as, we say, ek wil nie gelaaf maak, ek wil nie fitna nie, maar hy is vol kibber, hy is 'n baie gasd persoon, hy is 'n groot munafik. Ons sê gebruik natuurlik sukran, hy is die woord wat ons maar gebruik as ons nou natuurlijk die Arabic Afrikaans, al die Arab loanwords in our vernacular. Natuurlijk is daar meer as die. Dan natuurlijk iets anders wat ook nou natuurlijk Kaapse Moose Afrikaans verskil maak van Afrikaans van ander weergawe van Afrikaans is al die Afrikaanse idiomatische uitdrukkingen. There are so many Afrikaans idiomatic expressions used and understood exclusively by Cape Muslims. No other Afrikaans-speaking community uses or understands these Afrikaans idiomatic expressions. For example, we say, wanneer gaan ze begin 'n kop op die grond sit? Wanneer gaan ze voete nat maak? As jy op die berg, sy het uitgeval. Sy is uit. Ek moet nog gaan klaarmaak. No other Afrikaans-speaking community uses these Afrikaans idiomatic expressions or understand the meaning behind it. And most of the meaning of these, as jy op die berg, ek moet nog gaan klaarmaak, sy het uitgeval. The meaning of these Afrikaans idiomatic are known exclusively by Cape Muslims. Nobody else knows this or understand how to use it. Exclusively Cape Muslims. And the meanings of these is completely different to what he said. Most of it is figurative. As ek sê van die sê op die berg, nothing to do with the mountain. As ek sê, sy het uitgeval, beteken nie sy het uit die reis geval nou nie. Ek moet my skulden betaal, nothing to do with money. Ek moet nog het klaarmaak, nothing to do with I must get ready to go out. It's a unique, only the Cape Muslims use this in their variety of Afrikaans. And of course there are certain exclamations used exclusively by Cape Muslims in their Afrikaans. For example, we say, inshallah, mashallah, is reg gekom? Ja, alhamdulillah. Ek sê nou môre, inshallah. Hoe is 'n pragtige kind, mashallah. Astaghfirullah, hoe wat sê die man hier so? Mashallah, wala khawla wala quwwata illa. Wat gaan hier aan? These Islamic cultural terms, expressions are used exclusively by Cape Muslims in their variety of Afrikaans. Referring to time. You say, hoe laat is dit dan? Agter Asr, agter Dhuhr, Badal, Maghrib, Badal, Dhuhr. No other Afrikaans-speaking community uses this to refer to time. As ek nou kom en sê, hoe laat is dit dan agter Asr nou? Weet ek, okay, ek moet nou, wat het ek moet terugkom after Asr? No other community uses these periods of time. Nou praat weer van, there are also many Afrikaans words used exclusively. Afrikaans was used by Muslims but not found in the standard Afrikaans dictionaries. For example, we praat van Slamse school, van koples boek, 7 ane, 40 ane, 100 ane, geate, praat van metazales, van karinkels, all these things. Afrikaans, wat ek ken nie 7 ane, 40 ane, kees opsteek, het hulle van gepraat, het nou. It's Afrikaans word not found in the standard Afrikaans, but used by Cape Muslims. It's unique to Cape Muslims. Greeting terms, everything is a completely different language culture in their Afrikaans. Greeting term, assalamu alaikum, wa alaikum salam. Saying thank you, there are so many ways of saying thank you. You can say Malay word, terima kasih, or say shukran, or say jazakallah, jazakallah khair. There's one way of saying thank you, and Cape Muslims use it. And then also ways where one word is used in a different context. For example, we talk about Bismillah. Bismillah is always said before you start something. But Bismillah also used in different contexts. If someone is in front of you, say, carry on, Bismillah. Now Bismillah, the meaning of Bismillah changed now. If you have guests and you invited them for supper, whatever, before they start, you also say Bismillah. Now Bismillah means you may start eating. Or you're having a meal. You're sitting there having a meal on your own and invite someone to join in the meal. What do you say now? Bismillah. And what does the person say back to you? Bismillah malika. Now the meaning Bismillah changed. Now the meaning changed now, enjoy your meal. Carry on. This is one way how we use and so you can carry on basically to say how different Cape Muslim Afrikaans is compared to other varieties of Afrikaans. And we can see, and I've given a whole breakdown of the typical conversation with all the loan words, and I've given a breakdown with all the idiomatic expressions, exclamations, and all the things. But this section, I like to end off with something strange but true. And that is, like I said, I've given all this now to show how unique Cape Muslim Afrikaans is, how different it is. Amazing, it's different. Language culture, different language culture, everything is different, and you can see how different it is. But, strange but true, if you ask any Cape Muslim, what dialect do you speak? What is your mother tongue? The greater majority will answer you without thinking, Kaps. You see, during a typical conversation, when so many words were used, they're not consciously aware that so many words were used only to his or her understanding. They're not consciously aware of it. Yet, when they turn and speak to a non-Cape Muslim. They psychologically replace all these foreign loan words in their language with the equivalent English or Afrikaans word. In the back of their mind, they know. They will not understand. They don't use these words. They will not understand these words. It's a psychological thing. In the back of their mind, they know van hoe dialect zijn, aware, is not part of their vernacular. It's not part of our vernacular. Nobody uses these terms. It's not Kaap. We don't use Kaaps. Kaaps is a language on its own. Cape Muslim Afrikaans is a language on its own. It's two completely different dialects. They use then words, the Cape Muslims don't use Kaaps words like Udala, Yellas, Aware, and Skagaka. They don't use it. And they people who say proudly Kaaps, they know in the back of their mind, this is not part of their language. Words used in their culture. And vice versa. Kaaps people don't use Inshallah, MashaAllah, Alhamdulillah. They don't, and it's two completely different concepts. But if I ask any Muslim, they're not consciously aware of the uniqueness of their language, they will say, what the dialect praat Kaaps? Very few will say, ek praat Cape Muslim Afrikaans or Cape Malay Afrikaans. Or even the English-speaking people generation, if you talk to them, they use Inshallah, MashaAllah, Alhamdulillah, Ay Shukran. They all use the cultural, Islamic culture. No, one of them will say, my first tongue, my mother language is the Cape Malay vernacular. But to add to this, the Cape Muslim, like I said, they're not consciously aware of the uniqueness of their variety of Afrikaans. But the non-Cape Muslim, he knows how unique this variety. When the non-Cape Muslim approaches the Muslim, they use his cultural term, hi, Assalamu alaikum, whatever the case is. They will use the term because they know they're speaking, the dialect is different. The Muslim themselves, what the dialect praat, you don't have to believe me, no? Go home and do this test yourself. Ask any Muslim person, what is your moedertaal, what the dialect praat hier? The Afrikaans praat, without thinking, they're going to say, Afrikaans, Afrikaans. Okay, so that is where I end this first segment of this thing. But now the question is, where did the Cape Muslims get their Afrikaans from? You see, the Cape Muslims got their Afrikaans from the early Malays. And this is evident when we listen to the way they speak the Afrikaans today and the way it was written in those early Arabic Afrikaans texts. One of the first things you pick up when, let's look at those early Arabic Afrikaans texts, the similar thing, one of the similarities is the code switching between English, Afrikaans, Arabic, and Malay. In very much the same way Cape Muslims speak the Afrikaans today. And if you look at those early Arabic Afrikaans texts, it appears that those early Malays pronounce their words the way words and letters are pronounced in the Malay language. And this is evident when we look at, it is said that a foreign tongue almost always pronounces a language different from the native speaker. And this appears to be the case. They pronounce their Afrikaans the way words and letters are pronounced in the Malay language. One example, for example, is in the Malay language, the letter J is pronounced as J. In Afrikaans Afrikaans, letter J is pronounced as English Y. And like in English, J is in Jack, J. In Afrikaans, the Y is pronounced as the English Y. Now you get a word, for instance, like Jalang. Waar Jalang? Julle is so lekker. Now you can word Jalang, J. You can word the J, a gym, Arabic gym. Afrikaans, you get a word like Japan. Also spelled with a J, but pronounced Japan. Can you hear Arabic? Ja. Japan. Cape Muslim pronounce this word Japan as Japan, the way the J is pronounced in the Malay language, Japan. And Jan van Arabic and Jan van Arabic. That's how they pronounce it. The J, the way the J is pronounced in the Malay language. And then, of course, you get another word, Afrikaans word. You get the Afrikaans word like yay, J-Y. Yay. The J in this yay, because the Cape Muslim pronounce this J the way J is pronounced in the Malay language, and it pronounces it as J. Jalang, J. And this is how they... Something else also, in the Malay language, the letter C is pronounced as CH. So therefore, you get, for instance, a word like bacha, B-U-C-A, but it's pronounced bacha. Because the C is pronounced as CH, the word is pronounced as bacha. Similarly, you also get two words, like, for instance, now, bunchi and kati, whatever the case. In the Malay language, it's spelled B-U-N-C-I. But because C is pronounced as CH, the C-I is pronounced as chi, bunchi, kati. And this is how Cape Malays pronounce these words. So in Afrikaans, this C-I is pronounced as ki. It is spelled T-J-I-E, but pronounced as ki, boinki, karki. All other words ending in tizai, the Cape Muslims still pronounce as chi, the way the forebears pronounce it. Honti, katsi, biti, vanti. Honti, biti. Standard Afrikaans, hoinki, biki, vanki, sterki, whatever, ki. And that is where the Cape, can you see the difference there? And so we can carry on, if you look at those earlier Afrikaans, to see where the Cape Muslims got their pronunciation. At least there's hard proof where Cape Muslims got their Afrikaans from. And of course, many words are written in Standard Afrikaans as, for instance, double E is written I-E, and by O-E, like double O here in Standard Afrikaans was written as O-E. In fact, the very first word I picked up when I looked at those Arabic Afrikaans was the word Sus, Afrikaans Swiss. But there are other reasons why maybe they wrote it like that, because there are many sounds and letters in the Afrikaans language that is not found in the Arabic language. So the writer, what they did, they improvised and they used certain ways in order to get this sound they required. So that could be another reason why it was. But it's hardly, people, they don't actually learn a language from a book, man. They hear from their parents and foreparents. That is forebears, and that is how it is. But nevertheless, that is how it is. So that is basically where the Cape Muslims got their Afrikaans from. And they've been using this Afrikaans for so many generations. And then this happened until the 1980s, when Cape Muslims decided hulle gaan 'n oortak lead na Engels toe. And the reason for that was they saw English, they saw their language as a low-class language. They saw their language as a mispronounced language of this Standard Afrikaans language. They saw English as a language of prestige. And some even said that Afrikaans is a language of the oppressor. Now to answer the first question, it's a low-class language. You know, the Afrikaans, as I mentioned now in the Arabic Afrikaans text, was in use the final, after many attempts, the final grammar and spelling rules, Afrikaans grammar and spelling was only published 1917. Afrikaans was only recognized as an official language in 1925. These Arabic Afrikaans texts were written long before 1917, long before 1925. So it's impossible that this can be a mispronounced version of this much later created Standard Afrikaans. The opposite might be true. The Standard Afrikaans, this tongue-in-cheek now, I suppose, is a mispronounced version of this first Afrikaans, or original Afrikaans. Because you must remember, when they simplified the Dutch language, they simplified the spelling. And with the simplification, while they simplified it, the pronunciation changed. And with the change of pronunciation, they even moved further away from the original Dutch. So, if you really want to be funny, so Cape Muslim, I will tell you, your variety of Afrikaans is not a mispronounced variety. Speak it with pride and say, this I got from my forebears, as is with his pronunciation, and I know where my pronunciation comes from, and I will speak it with pride. It is not a mispronunciation. It's two separate. This came later, but it's still separate. But nevertheless, be that as it may. So, but now not to dwell on this too long, because there's so much that can be said on that, but I want to come to the main reason for this Indaba or whatever, symposium, whatever. But that's just to give you a background as to speak your language with pride. It's not a mispronounced version. It is an inherited version. It's part of your culture, part of your heritage, part of your identity. But the main reason for coming here is basically now this. You know, why is it important for Cape Malays or Cape Muslims to preserve this variety of Afrikaans? Firstly, I already gave one answer, because it's part of identity, part of our heritage, and whatever. But to give an example, you see, each and every community has a language, a culture, a tradition, a history, historical figures, is heroes in their history, unique to them. Every community. And every community has also a language that is unique to them. To give an example how a language is unique to a people, you know, in Afrikaans, in gewone Afrikaans, die nie moslim Afrikaans, is 'n goeie manier om vir iemand te sê nou, kry gou daai van my asseblief. Asseblief is 'n goeie manier. As jy vir jou aangee, dan sê baie dankie. Ons sê verskoon my, as iemand nou tamaaf kan, ons sê miskien tamaaf kan hulle kassie, hulle tamaaf natuurlik die Afrikaanse tamaaf is ekskuus en kanala is asseblief en is baie dankie. Om die woorde te gebruik is goeie maniere. As iemand in die kamer kom en hy groet, is goeie maniere. En die kyk mens, daai is goeie maniere om te sê asseblief en maar vat hy selfde goeie maniere nou om te sê asseblief en te sê verskoon goeiemôre en al dis en gebruik hy selfde goeie maniere en nou sit 'n moslim 'n gathering 'n hele merang of 'n gujajis en almal goed. Nou wat hy selfde goeie maniere en die tities en galaties besig en gebeis om te sazi en nou sê is vir die titie ekskuus gee gou 'n bord vir my asseblief. Nou gaan die titie nou kyk, hey, wat kan jy met jou is? En nou gee sy die bord aan en sy sê, dankie. Nou gaan die titie kyk, hey, wat kan jy met jou en is? Nou kom die Boeta in, nou sit by Gujaz, die Boeta sit allemaal nou hier zijn lekker. En hier komt dit met kofia op het top en misschien een groot tas bij zijn aan. En sê, mornings, môre, whatever. Maar nou kijk, as die ou net gewoon gegroet het, dan is bezig om te sas en kombuis, nie meer gaan een warm kop om te draai nie. Maar nou as die ou sê, morning, nou gaat die ouens allemaal lees, allemaal gaan nou, wat kan jy nou lees? Dan gaat die kop draai. Nou, hoekom is dit so? Because as goeie maniere in die dinge, maar this is not part of their language culture. It's not that they abhor or detest or whatever they can, because if there's a colleague, if a non-Muslim say more, they will use these words with their colleagues, non-Muslim colleagues. It's not that they abhor the thing. The opposite is also true. Dan jy indink, nou is al miskien 'n diens by die huis, en die pastoor wag nou vir die gemeente om nou tot ruste te kom en uiteindelik is die hele gemeente nou lekker rustig en hy spreek nou die gemeente aan, hy sê assalamu alaikum. Nou die meente kyk, hy sê julle almal wat so voorsit, bepaal van julle miskien die fokus het kan hulle. Okay, shukran. Nou die gemeente dieselfde ding. Wat kan jy met die pastoor? Die moslim wat die ou alleen hier inkom en hy sê nou morning. Hulle gedink wat kan die boete gaan nie weet wat om te antwoord hê, moet ek nou weer terug morning sê nie of moet ek wat moet ek weggee? Want die mense gaan miskien nou die ou se plaat is miskien geskroei maar ewe keer. Reality is nou dieselfde omgekeerd as hulle nou die diens hou nog en hulle weer kyk wat kan met die pastoor hier so nou is. Hoekom? En die woorde kan hulle termekaar sê assalamu alaikum is not part of the language culture. With this, I'm trying to emphasize how a language is connected to a people. A language is so connected to the people. We're not consciously aware how language is connected to your people. Now, see, in the earlier days, the Cape Muslims, when they inherited, that's the one thing. The second part of this is, and talking about language, those elements, the fact, you don't even have to know history. All you have to know is that the first Muslims came here about in the mid-1600s, and about 350 years later, they are proud and culturally rich Cape Muslim community. That's all you have to know. You don't even have to know. And then you ask yourself, how is it possible that after 350 years, they are still Cape Muslims? Why is that so? Because, you must remember, in North Africa, so many Muslims were stolen, kidnapped and sold to owners of human beings there in Americas. And they lost everything. They lost their culture, their traditions, their language, their religion, you name it. They lost everything. And yeah, after 350, you still get this proud and culturally rich Muslim community. When the colonists, when they colonized the different countries, whatever, South America, whatever they may be, one of the first things they did was they stripped the locals of their honor, their dignity, and their self-respect. After that, it's easy for them now to persuade or force the people to give up their culture, traditions, their language, even their identity. Today we find in South America, thousands of miles away from Europe, speaking European languages, Portuguese and Spanish. Even in Africa, you get Africans, can you imagine Africans speaking European languages. French, and Mozambique is Portuguese. African languages. Here in the Cape again was colonized by the Dutch East Indian Company. It was with the blessings of the Dutch government. They too tried to impose their language on the locals. But you must remember, people from diverse origins were brought here. They spoke different languages, different cultures. But there was one group amongst all those peoples who refused to surrender the honor, their dignity, and their self-respect. Islam was banned. Their religion was banned here in the Cape for 150 years. The only religion allowed here was the Dutch Reformed Church or denomination. And for 150 years in those people, nobody was allowed to practice their religion. If you, those people were severe. Nobody, if they catch you practicing or propagating any other, you'll be subject to brutes. And those people were severe in their punishment, in their torture, in their... Yet under 450, they managed to pass in the full package. Culture, traditions, language, identity, everything, a full package. For 150 years under these strange diaconsists, they passed it down. Muslims were only allowed to practice religion in 1804. But for 150 years, they managed to pass down the full package. Customs, traditions, religion, the whole work to the people today, and they managed to pass it on to the people. This is how? Why is it? Because they had honest, dignity, self-respect. And they were the mercy of so many missionaries. They were Dutch missionaries, they were German missionaries, they were English missionaries. They stood their ground. Instead, they became just as active in propagating their religion amongst people who also suffered, like they suffered as fellow slaves, and many of them embraced the religion of Islam. So eventually, but now, what happened now? So after that, Cape Muslim had always been a hardcore Malay community, and they've been practicing their Malay culture. Everything was in Afrikaans. The khutbahs was in Afrikaans. The slumse school was in Afrikaans. The corporate was in Afrikaans. The lectures, the dars was in Afrikaans. Everything was in Afrikaans. Even the way we were taught how to learn to read the Arabic script was in Cape Malay style. That time we used the word. Ons het gekend van Fatha Kasra en Damani. Het was dit is Boa en Doa. En als we lekker gesing, alif dit is alif Boa, alif dapan en ons het gekend van Tanwini. Ons het uit gepraat van Doa dit is Boa Boa. En hij was die lekkerste om te gebasser dat alif Doa dit is aan alif Doa Boa en alif Doa dapan Kan ons nou... Hij zei, staal van, everything was gehad. Hij toen Cape Malay nog hard Cape Malay geweest. De vrouw is nog met Daura gedragen, whatever the case. Hij is de rechte wat Malay nog Malay geweest. And then, suddenly, during the 80s, so at the time, alles wat zo hard Malay, die hij, aan het slamse school gezegd, goed was, dingen, die alle Malay zo nooit kon denken in 100 jaar nie, dat een dag gaan die Cape Malays Engels praat. Not in 100 years. Alles was gehard. Zomaar Malay, slumse school, you know, alles Malay. If they should come back now and see Cape Malays parading as Englishmen and Englishwomen, if they should come back now and see that the Cape Malays have now exchanged a part parading as descendants of the English who came here 100 years later, they'll be at a loss for words. If they should come back here to see that the Cape Malays have exchanged a part of their identity for a foreign identity, they'll be at a loss for words. Now this is the question now. In fact, no, I don't think they'll be at a loss for words because they were very outspoken. They would have used one of their favorite words. En wat is die? Julle hou vir julle wat hulle nie is nie. Kom terug huis toe. So the question now is it too late? Maar wie is verantwoordelik vir die? It is our generation. Ag, dit is soveel. Hoekom het dit nou oors gewees het nou wat die chain break nou? Hoekom het nou oors generation gewees? Want het is nou 350 jaar dat lekker aangegaan tot die oors generation. And so we encourage our children to abandon a part of our culture. We encourage our children. It is not their fault. We've all been a bilingual society. And now our children are a monolingual society. Imagine now they can only speak one language. The question now is it too late to invite them back to who they really are? You see, our forebears did their duty to preserve the whole package. And the task of preserving our culture and tradition for future generations now falls on us. We have to do that now. So now, is it too late for them? So what can we do to make this language, our ancestral or cultural language, part of them, make them a bilingual society again? What can we do to put life in what can we do to prevent this part of our diction from becoming foreign to future generations? You know, the last remaining speakers of this vernacular appears to be well over 50 years of age. And if they should die out, so will this, our cultural vernacular. What can we do to prevent that from robbing our future? At the beginning I said, I give an example how a language is connected to a people. I give an example there. So what do we do not to rob our future Cape Muslims from being a community without a language, operating on a foreign language only? What can we do now? And that's a million-dollar questions that we need answers for now. And this is the purpose of this thing. We need your ideas. How can we revive this? Can it be revived? Can we reintroduce our cultural, our traditional language to our children? What can we do? How do we do it? And this is up to you. This is where I'd like you to give suggestions. What can we do to do our duty as well? As I said, our forebears did their duty. It is now our duty. The task of preserving our culture for future falls on us. What can we do? Anyone? Rashida? With the mic mess with you. Make it louder, Ma. Oh, I think it's on.
Shukran. Baik, terima kasih. Shukran for inviting me, Brother Yusuf. I just, this is a question I've been on for a very long time. How can we inculcate Afrikaans language as our language? Now, the click and the ik sound comes from the Khoi, because most of our Malay forefathers married Khoi women, so their language is also part of our this culture. I think where we should start is the first Afrikaans book, and like Ahmad David said in his book, that that's the first Afrikaans book that was written was the Quran. And I think that is a point of where we can start is to show that that language started there. I don't say it started there, but the first book was written in Afrikaans. And if we can go back to that Afrikaans book, that Holy Quran that was written, perhaps there will be interest in why it was written in that language, how did it come to be written in that style, and maybe that will be a starting point. That's just my suggestion.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. If I may start. Okay. Whenever you pose a question or suggestion, give a suggestion on the preservation of everything. Can we try to give it to a maximum of 2 minutes or so, everyone? Otherwise, just to make sure everyone get a chance to put in their questions and suggestions on what can be done to preserve this language.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat, Alexander, for having this here. I think it's the second round. Alhamdulillah. The thing is, you talk about Cape Muslim. I need you to know why don't you get a Cape Christian or Cape Indian? Why Cape Muslim? Is there any specific thing to that? And also, most of the books were handwritten here at Cape Town, and it was written in Malay. You don't mention that. And the books of our forefathers is priceless, actually. Everybody's looking for it. So why only the Malay books is that are priceless, not the Arabic Afrikaans that were printed in Turkey or Egypt, I think? Why are they not priceless? And then I need to know, you use some words, but you don't define where it really comes from, the origins. I mean, if you break down the words, maybe it's only few, maybe 2 or 3. I have a breakdown of how the words originated from. Was it from the Dutch, or was it from the locals here? And also, why is it that the Dutch language didn't turn into Afrikaans in Indonesia? Why it was totally scrapped when Indonesia became independent? Terima kasih.
Just a quick answer on that. You know, Indonesia was colonized by the Dutch for 350 years. The result of that was that many Dutch words crept into the Malay language. But apart from the Dutch words, there were many, before Islam, Indonesia was a predominantly Hindu and Buddhist area. The result of that is, so there are many foreign loan words that crept into the Malay language. Like, for instance, there's Chinese words, there are many Tamil loan words, there are many Sanskrit words, there are many Dutch loan words, Portuguese words, many Arabic words, there are Persian words, whatever. And when they came here, they came with all these foreign loan words in their language. Locally, the words were just seen as Malay words. But technically, it was, for example, you know, the word puzzis and the word butter is a Sanskrit word. You don't know. Marv?
That's what I needed to know, the breakdown of the words.
Ja, jy sien, inshallah, alles so wel is dan, my next boek gebruik van elke woord, van die Chinese words en van die... Only different waar vandaan kom. Maar geen 2 typical examples now, bijvoorbeeld now, we didn't know, for us, this is the Malay words, and others, from so many different things. Of course, you know, during the 1500s, the Portuguese was a trading language between the earlier Malays and the lingua franca developed, where words from both the Portuguese into the Malay language and Malay language, and they came with this mixed language here as well. So there are many things, but that's not about the technicalities of the creation of the Afrikaans. Today's thing is more about the preservation of this language, and we can go into that some other time, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My naam is Alamin Gaidin. Ek is Afrikaans absoluut. Ek lyk nie om goed in Engels te sê nie, en ek dink almal verstaan dat ons in Afrikaans kan praat. En nie dat ek van die Parel is nie, maar ek praat Afrikaans. Ek skryf Afrikaanse gedigte. Ek translitereer dit in Arabies Afrikaans. Ek het nou 'n boek uitgebring ook daarmee. So vir my is dit om die Afrikaans Arabies voor te sit, moet 'n mens seker goed. Ek het nou die dag gelees in die standaard 9, standaard 10 Afrikaans se boek in die agterkant, hoe hulle werk gemaak het om Afrikaans te behou. En Johan voor my dra baie kennis daarvan om te weet hoe hulle dit gedoen het en wat probeer om dit te doen het. En een van die dinge het hulle gesê dat gedigte moet geskryf word en dan moet ons probeer om dit in die skole in te kry. En vir my om dit te begin is om dit by Al-Azhar en al die plekke in te kry sonder dat dit 'n deel is van die curriculum, sodat hulle vertroud kan raak daarmee. En daarna, inshallah, as ons daarvan aan werk, kan ons miskien geskrifte doen en dit ook versprei. En Afrikaans, Arabies sal behoue gebly word, inshallah.
Ons kom by Arabic Afrikaans na die alles so wels.
Ja, assalamu alaikum. Ik ga bij short en sweet wees, maar ik voel dat ons met literature create. Dat is basically it. Krijg boeken wat geschreven is in die taal, zodat die mensen het kan lezen. Want als bij mensen wat het nog praten, en als bij mensen wat belangstel. Ik heb een paar jaar terug een Kaaps begin schrijven. En ik heb ook deur my journey, toe ik eerst uitvind dat ik niet eindelijk Afrikaans praat. En het was een zeer... Het was een regtig baie painful proses. Ek het gehuil. Het was 'n mourning proses van besef dat mense vir my gelieg het al die jare en ek klink anders en besef toe ek actually 'n oor het wat actually opgaan in my eie stem hoor om actually te voel dat die klanke wat uit my mond uitkom klink nie soos hier wat juffrou vir my verduidelik en juffrou lyk kan soos ek maar sy sê en vir my kan nie ontie sê nie. Ek moet onderbroek sê. So daai journey al klaar daar begin het daai journey vir my die pad verder gevat naar die Cape Vernacular toe en dit is waar ek op Alexander gekom het in sy website. So ek voel wat hy al klaar begin het al deur om 'n website te creëer, deur om 'n boek te creëer. Almal van ons wat magtig is, soos ek wat ook skryf, Daai moet nou geadopt word into ons literature en ons moet literature create so veel as wat ons kan en daai gaan die proses dan ook aan die begin sit. Shukran.
Kan ek net iets byvoeg wat sy nog genoem het nou? Ja.
Assalamu alaikum.
Kan ek net iets byvoeg wat sy gesê het nou? Sien ons nou so woordeboekie so daar buite sal die sinasie Dictionary of Loanwords in the Cape Mousse vernacular. What we need now is om nou koppe by mekaar sit om nou ooreen te stem nou hoe gaan ons nou sekere woorde spel man. Maar nou gaan ons mense kry met lekker baas Indonesië wat goed in die taal, mense wat goed in Arabies alleen. Mense wat nou oor 50 wat al meer as 50 jaar aan die taal nou praat man. Soos ek sê the last remaining speakers are all well over 50 and they should die out and this vernacular will definitely die out. So we must get them and decide on a common way of spelling. And then when we have this book, we have the book now, and we have a common way of spelling, then we can start introducing it into schools and say this is our vernacular, and maybe if we start off with Muslim schools, this is what we can do, this is what it is verified, and these are the people involved in this, and we can carry on. And then maybe once you have a unified way of spelling, and of course people with logistics, studying logistics, anything to do with those people, we need those people, Arabic speaking people, Bahasa Indonesian people, studying logistics, mannetjies, die wat al meer as 50 jaar die taal praat, wat maak jy vir hulle? En tesaam sit dat besluit ons nou, okay, so gaan ons die woorde nou spel. As we ingekom het nou, dat ons nou, dan kan ons het oordra aan skole. Dat is maar net nog een voorstel. Maar ek sê, niemand neem notas, maar alles is natuurlijk opgeneem op die video wat ons hier praat en ons gaan later weer kyk wat ons alles gesê het. Maar sê maar julle sê en as nou jammer dat is nie in camera en ek wil so graag gehad het cameraman moet nou op die gesigte sit van almal wat nou praat. As ek klaar met die games is, dan gaan dit nou aan. Okay.
Okay. I think we are dealing with a very complex question. It's not as simple as it sounds. First of all, as someone who has been a language teacher for many, many years, more than 40 years, we must distinguish between what is a dialect and what is a language. Secondly, no language remains intact. Not any language in the world has ever remained intact. If we think that any language can remain pure, then we misunderstand how language interacts and how people interact with a language. So no language is pure. There is no such thing as a pure language, and nobody can own a language. It belongs to whoever who uses it. So what we are talking about, and the other thing is, when it comes to Cape Town and the way in which language has, how Cape Malay language has changed, we mustn't forget about the way in which Islam has been Arabized in Cape Town. I mean, people don't say Tramakasi anymore, they say Shukran. They don't say Kasi for Allah anymore, they say Afwan, and so on and so on and so on. So we must also try and fathom and understand where those changes come from and how and why it impacted on the language that we are talking about now. It's not just some bogeyman called Afrikaans imposition. We ourselves are responsible for those changes because we have sent our children to school where they learn English and Afrikaans with English linguistic registers and Afrikaans linguistic registers. There is no way that we are going to be able to change that easily. I'm not saying that it can't be changed. I never believe that nothing can change. But I'm saying if we want to change it, we need to look at the whole question scientifically and objectively, and also our aims and our reasons for wanting to stop the marginalization of a dialect. We must look at it very carefully and see what are our actual objectives. What are we trying to do? Because there is no way that it's going to disempower languages which people actually use every day in schools, in universities, in their social engagements, etc. We're talking about a dialect that was used at a very particular time in a very particular community. I mean, I grew up in the Boekap, and when I go to the Boekap, I connect with that language that we're talking about now. But it emanates from a particular community at a particular historical period and a particular cultural historical period. That period is gone. It doesn't exist anymore. That has been transformed. It has been transformed, and we have sent children to schools, to private Model C schools, etc., 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 where they speak English according to English standards, Afrikaans according to Afrikaans standards. So this project that you have in mind to revive, shall we say, Cape Malay language must have very clear objectives, because you must also be very careful about this identity thing. There's far too much emphasis on ethnicity and identity that works against the creation of a nation. So we must be careful. We mustn't ghettoize it. If we ghettoize it, then we are doing exactly what the old nationalist government did with Ayasaka's story, and we don't want to repeat history. So this is a very exciting project. It's very exciting because for me, I wrote a little poem using Malay Kaapse Afrikaans once, and I read it to my class. Nobody could understand it. Because obviously it didn't register with them. It doesn't register with their linguistic registers. So you're dealing with a very interesting but very tricky project, and we must be careful how we go forward with it. Okay. Because some people would also say, like in Ireland, for example, the Irish dialect, people say it's the working classes who speak that. And it's a consequence of miseducation and undereducation and the fact that they are an underclass. That is why they speak that. So we mustn't romanticize about it either. But I see the general thrust of the movement to stop the marginalization of it. But we must be careful where and how we place it in the general linguistic context. Thank you.
Yes, shukran. Marv, can I net emphasize if
I'll keep it 30 seconds. Don't worry.
No, you can fine. I'm not saying that. If you can try to maximum 2 minutes, inshallah. Otherwise, to make sure everyone get a chance.
Of course, so, shukran, assalamu alaikum to everyone. So maybe I'm speaking on behalf of the youth. You know, I'm only 25 years old.
Near to you, Marv.
Oh, Marv. And what I can say to answer your question, I think growing up, you really gain a misconception about, you know, almost the Cape Malay Afrikaans. It's almost like when you're brought up and you're just surrounded with friends and family, it almost comes across as like this. I've heard the term Kombuis Afrikaans. So I think what's very important from a parent's perspective is just to bring pride to the culture and bring pride to the language. Because if parents were like, you know what, this is your history, this is where you're from. I know you eat samosas and dalchis, but like, this is part of who you are, and it's something that you need to be proud of. I think that would encourage more youth to want to be a part of it. Because at the moment you go to school, you speak English, you Afrikaans, etc. But you know what I mean? That pride needs to come from the household. I think that will help solve the problem.
Okay, shukran.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, geliefde broers en sisters. Alhamdulillah, dank voor Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah vergunde dat ons bij elkaar kan gekomen om te praten met allemaal. En ik wil ook voor professor Mohammed Alexander bedanken, alhamdulillah, met die mooie woorden wat hij gezegd heeft. Ik is Imam Shaki Daris van Makassar. En ik heb nog alle weer gekomen dear that Professor Alexander, he invited me to come. Nou, alhamdulillah, ik was al 2 jaar wat ik nou samen met Fatima Ali is op Radio 786 om te praten over Afrikaans. Ons was nog 2 weken geleden weer en zij het gevraagd en professor Tijd was ook op, alhamdulillah, dat hoe is het dat ons via Afrikaans kan in die massage brengen. Nou, ik is een persoon natuurlijk, ik heb nou ook net vrijdag, ja, het ik een goedbaan in Sanfrecce Masjid en ik heb niet 80% Afrikaans gepraat.
Okay.
En ik heb gepraat van die dood, alhamdulillah. Nou, wat ik wil zeggen is om Afrikaans te bevorderen. Al die imams, wat ik kan weten, als we komen van ding van imam Shakir Gamildin. Imam Shakir Gamildin heeft gepraat Arab en Afrikaans. Alhamdulillah, mijn ustad wat ik ben geleerd, imam Ismail Latif van die strand, hij heeft gepraat Arab en Afrikaans. En alhamdulillah, ik heb geleerd Arab en Afrikaans. En wat ik ook wil zeggen voor u is, ik heb een kitab van Sheikh Ismail Hanif, wat ik denk in 51. En hij heeft geschreven Arabisch, en dan het die translation, het die regie en ook in Arabisch. Bijvoorbeeld, als je zegt kataba, die wrote in Engels, ne? Maar als je zegt kataba, hij heeft geschreven. Dan zal hij schrijven, ha, ja, ti, hij, ha, sin, kafra, fa. En hij verstaan het. En dat is een nagokitab van hem. Zo, wat ik wil zeggen is om die Afrikaans te bevorderen, moeten we beginnen in die madrasas. En in die scholen, in die kinders wat nou kindergarten, zoals ze zeggen. En als we praten van die masajid, moeten we vragen voor die, ik ken baie van die imams en die alims en die sheikhs. Sheikh Gabriel was een man wat in de tijd Afrikaans gepraat had, nou was hij net Engels. En ik zeg altijd, ons het Afrikaans voor Engels. Dit het ons gedaan. En ons moet proberen om weer terug te brengen in die masajid. Als ons Engels praat, laat ons half Engels praten en dan half Afrikaans. Shukran.
Mashallah. Goeie dinge. En is ook blij om nou, Imam Daris nou, ik heb Imam Daris gewoon op je, samen met Fatima Ali en samen met wat is oom zijn naam? Oom Hendrik. Oh ja, oom Thijs, dat is recht, ja. Ik heb nou voor oom Thijs gewoon van Imam Hari, Salih, Fatima Ali programma. Dat is ook zo blij om voor oom Thijs en voor Imam Daris nou te ontmoeten uiteindelijk, in persoon. Okay, Mark.
Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me? My name is Zubaida. I'm a teacher at Daranaim High School, alhamdulillah. I teach Afrikaans. I'm an Afrikaans teacher. And I just want to bring us back to reality. I teach these kids every day. Grade 8, 9 and 10. Next year, inshallah. They don't read Afrikaans. They don't want to speak the language. They can't speak the language. I teach Afrikaans like I was taught at high school, a third language, which was German, a foreign language. That's how I teach Afrikaans. We assumed when we grew up, we could read. We understood. We didn't say when you put a sentence in the past tense, you use het plus ge. We just knew how to do it. When I teach Afrikaans, I have to teach them how to structure the lesson or the sentence and the word order, which we weren't taught in that way. That is the reality of today. So to bring in a complete other dialect to these kids, I'm struggling to teach them caps. That's what I wanted to say. Shukran.
Can I just answer Marv quickly? Answer. You know, in the Americas, at the time, the Apache or the Indians, Apache, they were all taken away from they were stolen away, taken to boarding school and prevented from speaking their language. You know, they were forced to speak the English language. And today we find that so many activists trying to revive their languages, and the people are so proud to hear that this is actually us. This is our ancestral languages, and they took on to it. Is how you do. You know, just to have another example, you know, the Hebrew language was dormant for almost 1,000 years. Nobody used it. It was only in text there. But after 1,000 years, some activists came and they revived this. And today there are more than 5 million Hebrew speakers. It was a dead language for 1,000 years. Yeah, I don't think we must see it like that. Otherwise, what I'm trying to say, we can. If those people, those petty activists, and they're winning slowly also because they're instilling pride in their people for their, as I mentioned in the beginning, every people, every community, they have their culture, their traditions, their language, their history that is unique to them. If people walk with someone else's history, someone else's culture, you don't feel it's not right. So if someone introduces it to yourself, this is my own ancestral history.
Sorry, I commend you on your work. It's a lot of work. And it's things I've been battling with all my life. Because we grew up Afrikaans. I was in Afrikaans class, sub A, B, and 1, and 2. And because of Afrikaans being seen as the oppressor's language, and my father being very politically involved, it was seen as the border language, we were put into complete English schools, all of us. And going to mosque at that time, because in our house we had to read both languages, and we had to speak both properly. Daar is nie nog van die en die nie, jy kry 'n klap. But that's how we were raised. And as a young girl going to the mosque, and the imam speaks about whatever lecture, and it doesn't come out in proper English, my brain shut off and I didn't go to mosque. That's how we were raised. But and I've struggled for years, because then as I did Arabic, I could see the source of the language coming, like the kubus or subuh or whatever, and when I met Malaysians and I read more on the language, I could see where the Teramakasi and the Tramakasi and the Kaparang and Labarang came from. So I appreciate that. And I'm actually sitting and thinking, I need to do a lesson on this. So, because the children hear their mothers, and they come and read in my class about a chi and this, and I say, no, wait, we do Afrikaans. So for them to know why they're saying that, which I didn't know myself, where it comes from, which is interesting. So the work is very interesting, and I will certainly do a lesson on this book in my class, inshallah.
Okay, shukran. There's people at the back as well.
Okay, Assalamu alaikum. I'm not speaking from an academic point of view, I'm speaking as a parent. I listen to everybody's academic viewpoint and understand where they come from. But just being a normal person and as a parent, what transcends with me is that it was spoken to me by my grandmother, by my mother still as a skel. And I believe that this is how you actually create this awareness in the youth. You have to use it in the home without saying that it's a lesser form of a vernacular or a lesser form of a language. I concur with that young man. We need to inculcate pride in our youth when they use it. And we have to be current. Why does somebody stupid like, sorry to the youth, somebody like youngster CPT appeal to the youth? He raps in profound, disgusting Afrikaans language at times, but he appeals to them because it's current. It's trendy, it's with it. He doesn't see it as a lesser form of a language. It's something to be proud of. This is where it starts with us in the madrasa. Like the Imam said, I concur. And at home, we as parents have to use it proudly. We have to use it and explain it to our kids and say, "Ek sê so, want jy wat meen it?" You know, you have to say it with pride. And I remember my daughter having difficulty at school with Afrikaans, and then she used to say, "I can't understand what you're saying, I can't understand what you're saying." Then when she started doing something wrong, I started scolding her in Afrikaans. Saying, "Ek gaan jou blerrie bliksem." Then she said, "Nou verstaan jy wat ek sê, né?" So that's exactly what I just want to say, is that it's the small start, the small step, that we can keep it alive. It doesn't have to go. It will build up to the literal part and the academic part, introducing it into schools. But start with us, the small steps. That's going to make the first difference.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Shukran. At this moment, as I'm sitting here quickly, can I take more than 2 minutes, please?
Of course, man. 3.
And then perhaps I need to ask this, and perhaps can I just, soos ek hier sit,
Okay.
voel ek dat ek 'n gedig wil opdra. Met u permission.
Maar iemand voor dat weer aangaan, iemand heeft mij een e-mail gestuurd om te zeggen, is afgetreden schoolhoof en hij doet nou gedachten.
Dat is ek.
Wie is die persoon wat gezegd is afgetreden principaal, hij doet nog gedachten?
Maar soos ze sê in Afrikaans met u permitskap.
Okay, goed.
Inshallah.
Goed.
Is dit okay?
Okay,
Maar
goed.
voor ek dit opdra, dan wil ek net sê dat hierdie is eintlik 'n goeie forum. Want in hierdie forum, soos ek nou hier sit, is daar baie vrae wat opkom voordat daar enige antwoorde is. En sommige van die vrae wat opkom nou in myself is dat ek het 'n gevoel dat by u is daar 'n streweling tussen die woorde te gebruik Cape Malay en Cape Muslim op die oomblik. En u het later begin te gesels oor Cape Malay. Dan kom die vraag op in terme van as ons praat om Afrikaans behoue te laat bly, van watter Afrikaans praat ons? Praat ons van die Cape Malay Afrikaans of praat ons van Afrikaans wat op die Kaapse vlakte gepraat word? En as ons praat van Afrikaans, net soos die dame voor my gepraat het, praat ons van, wil ons die Afrikaanse taal behoue laat bly as 'n vorm van kultuur of wil ons die kultuur behou? En dit is 'n ander vraag. Die vraag wat dan opkom is, as ons kyk na Afrikaans, wil ons die Afrikaans dan ook insluit in terme van ons hip-hop Afrikaans wat ook groot is en wat ook 'n groot omvang het op die oomblik soos die dame net voor dit gesê het. En dit is dan belangrik dat ons ook besef en kyk na hoe het die Afrikaans wat ons gepraat het, hoe het dit begin verdwyn? Okay, daar is heel party redes. En een van daardie redes is ook dat die Afrikaans wat ons vandag praat en wat ons vandag hoor ook, is baie afgewater van die Kaapse Malayer Afrikaans ook. Okay? En dan kyk 'n mens byvoorbeeld na Cape Malay en Cape Muslim. Nou, as ons praat van Cape Muslim, dan is die Arabiers baie nader aan die Koran. En dan kyk 'n mens dat die probleem wat dit gaat skep as ons gaat praat weer van Cape Malay Afrikaans ook. En dit is iets wat 'n mens in gedagte moet hou in terme van die vraag wat nou net in my kop geëvoke word op die oomblik. En nou siende van die Afrikaans en almal dat die dame voorheen gepraat in terme van die literatuur. Ek sal sê dit begin ook daar met dat ek het Afrikaans geleer aan die boesem van my moeder, aan die borste van my moeder. En dit is waar ons moet kan, met rympies en dis meer. Ons het geleer hoe om te batsa met rympies, met melody, en dis meer, dit is iets gekom. Wat ons kan behoue laat bly, is die skryfkultuur. Die skryfkultuur. In die Javanese, Arabic, okay, Afrikaans, Arabiers, dit kan behoue gebly word. In terme van die goedeba wat gelewer word in Afrikaans, daar's 'n tyd toe ek opgegroei het, dan as 'n man Engels praat en hy praat Engels uit die vlak uit daarbo, dan het ek gesê, jy wil vir my onderdruk because jy praat 'n taal wat ek nie verstaan nie. Okay? Nou as ons in Afrikaans wil praat, soos ons hom gepraat het, wil ons miskien ons kinders onthou van die kennis wat hulle kan opdra, of weerhou van die kennis wat hulle kan opgedra word. Dit is alles vrae wat by my kom. En kan ek nou my gedig opdra? En dan kom die vraag uit. Okay, so ek wil u net los. Die Arabiers Afrikaans kan behoue bly. En dit moet behoue bly. Okay, but ek wil gewoon net, kan ek met u permitskap. Okay.
Je mag in spanning
Okay,
om dat te horen.
nou,
dingen.
die een ding wat ek miskien het nagelaat het om te sê is dat change is inevitable. But we need to look at how we want to be, how we want that change to inform us. Are we informed by change or do we inform change? And that is what we need to think about. Culture, for me, it will come and it will go over time periods, perhaps. But what we shouldn't let go is the culture of being together. And this is what my poetry is all about.
Okay.
Samen zijn, ons eie taal. Thank you, please. Waar kom het vandaan? Het Kanala en by 'n trammekassie begin toe verdwyn toe die son op 'n skyn in Kanaladorp. Is baie keer die slaam by die huis vir Oomie, by Boeja en almal tuis begrawe onder die puinhoop van opgegroude fondasies en tuimelende mure, veroorsaak deur die witman en sy bose giere. Mens in sien. Geskitter op die Kaapse vlakte waar familie mekaar nimmer skaars sien. Geknel onder die al-ewige gesukkel om huisheer te voorsien, bly dit net 'n gedagte, vervang met 'n aspirasie om Engels te master. Koud word mens gegroet met hello en goodbye. Het ons dan ons identiteit versmaai? Waarheen, Boeta? Waarheen? Waarheen, Titi? Waarheen? Ons lewenssout van saamwees en naaste liefde word uit ons gemergel met 'n kwynende eie taal van Hufa en Tremakassie vir Allah.
MashaAllah. Maar goed, dingen. Maar goed, Rashida, zeggen, kan je niet iets zeggen? Dat is niet, zei nou die Cape, wat is het nou weer? Cape, dat is niet Daniels, wat is die dingen nou weer? Cape Muslim Poets Association, hè? Ja, dus ik zie zo'n klomp dichters, zo, hiervoor is dichter, daar is Erwin of daar is dichter. Maar wat ik zoek, had één onderwijzer, afgetreden principaal, voor mij e-mail gestuurd om te zeggen, is nou afgetreden, maar hij schreef ook nou gedichten. Je weet of je vandaag hier zo is, lijkt me niet zo niet. Maar oké, maar ik wil even bekendstellen aan Tasneem. Zij is nou die op het ogenblik die main persoon in die Cape Muslim Poets Society. Dat is een mooi gedicht bij je, mashallah. Okay.
Assalamu alaikum. It's hard to follow that. Mashallah. I want to riff off my former English teacher. Who spoke earlier. And something that I'm sitting with. We talk about hierdie variant as Cape Malayers, okay? So it's Cape Malay, and we call ourselves the Cape Malay community. But we've had so many waves of Muslims coming to the Cape over those 350 years. If you go to the Karamat, for example, and you ask, where does this person come from? Then you'll find out they're not all princes from Batavia, which is what the one narrative is, right? And that's the one that we claim. But on Signal Hill came from Afghanistan, for example. And then we also had a wave of Turkish immigration. And so all of those Islams also influenced the community at the Cape, right? So I guess part of my question is about the evolution of the language, right? Because language isn't static, and that was the point that was made, and culture isn't static. And so even our Islam has shifted over in the last generation or so, become more anglicized and Arabized, right? And so you'll even hear those of us who speak English will say the Arabic words, and those of us who speak Afrikaans will say the more Malay words. Right? So how do we take that into account in this preservation or regeneration of a language that is so iconically Cape? That's my first question. The second question is, who is this community of Cape Malay Afrikaans speakers? Is it the Muslim community? Because then we're a minority. We're less than 2% of the population, in South Africa. Is it a Cape Afrikaans community? But then we're competing with other variants as well. And so, I guess, can we remain alive to that? And I maybe just repeat the question around what is it that we're wanting to preserve. Last point is to say that some of those Dutch words, some of those Indonesian words are in Afrikaans, right? We no longer use kaparangs. So should we be holding on to kaparangs? Even when I take wudu, I don't wear kaparangs, right? I'm wearing flip-flops now or something else. But pisang is in Afrikaans and has gone into Afrikaans proper, right? And so what are we wanting to highlight? Because I believe that highlighting this variant is important, and the diversities of Afrikaans is really, really important. It's wonderful and must be not just preserved, but needs to be promoted. But what is that? And can we do so also in this evolutionary track that we are on? Shukran.
Can I speak?
Hoe lang is het nou? Nog 3 nog. Maar goed, het is wel iets hè? Oh, okay, Bukab, yeah, I know him, okay.
Yeah, and my uncle was the late Professor Muhammad Ajam.
So I also always mention Muhammad Ajam.
Yeah, that was my uncle, alhamdulillah.
Okay.
But the thing is, ons try mos maar net om ons kalse te hou. En alhamdulillah, we shukr Allah subhanallah for what we are and where we come from. Ek sê altyd, die people get where we come from. En my kinders weet, ek het nie na school gegaan nie, but alhamdulillah, I shukr Allah subhanallah, we're raising Muslim children first. And then I educated them, alhamdulillah. And was Fadil Arnold's last lecture I went to, I just said, do you know what is a wallahi? So the youth said, as iemand wat baie kan eat. So don't underestimate them, because we are also implementing these things on our children. Because my kinders altyd sê, my kleinkinders, wat ma sê like that. En ek sal sê, hy koos om met hy woorde dan gebruik. So alhamdulillah, may Allah continue our culture, be proud of who we are and what we have strived for who we are today. Ek hoop ek praat alright, nee? So may Allah subhanallah grant us all the ability to go forth with what we are and who we are and where we come from, inshallah. And may Allah protect us, amen. Shukran for a beautiful lecture. I like history, even if I didn't have education. Ek het in 'n primary school gemaak.
Nee, maar dit klink soos 'n professor hier. Maar baie shukran, baie ek waardeer dit, ek waardeer dit baie interessante woorde.
En die ding is, as ek in 'n meeting gekom het by die skool, as ek Ik praat 3 talen. Eén is Afrikaans, één is Engels en één is gemixt. By the time I get out of this meeting, heb ik heel tijd van gepraat. En alhamdulillah, I've raised 4 beautiful daughters. One now, I passed on 4 years ago due to cancer. But alhamdulillah, I shukr Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first for what I have raised them as Muslims. And may Allah protect our youth and go forward with this what is happening. And I must say, to Saldi Arnold and you that's trying to preserve this our heritage. My uncle, meneer Ajam, hij heeft een dag toe tel die politie om op. Toen zei die politie, maar jij praat aan het is beter Afrikaans als wat ik kan praten. I mean, so, ons moet kan proud wees voor wie ons is and where we derive from. Shukran, assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. First of all, ik wil niet baie shukran sê vir Boeta Mohammed. Ik wil net baie shukran sê vir 'n baie phenomenal speech wat Boeta Mohammed daar gehou het en ek dink dit is baie important. En ek praat nou in my Malay, Konrad. In my Malay Afrikaans. Maar wat ik niet wil bijzetten is iets wat ik opgeleerd heb, is dat die history van die Afrikaans language wordt die amper in die school mee geteach. And that is the crux. That is, besides the literature, that is definitely one of the most important things. Moet ons die geschiedenis van die Afrikaanse taal binnen in die skole moet ons probeer inkry. Want op university level, as jy met die students praat oor die history van Afrikaans, dan is het vir hulle iets totally niet. So that is what I think. I think we need to get the history of Afrikaans. And then natuurlijk, as ons lief is vir Afrikaans, moet ons lief is vir al die variants van Afrikaans. So yes, and then to that youth, yes, I'm also a mother and my kinders praat ook Engels, want ek is getrouwd met 'n buitelander. Wat as ek vir hulle skel, dan weet hulle natuurlijk waarvan ek praat. Hulle verstaan alles.
Okay. Assalamualaikum, Siddiq Slamang. Just on the basis of agreeing with the Boeta, the foundation phase is a way to start. But also, social media plays a major role in kids' lives, right? And the one thing that attracts them is, ik praat Engels en Afrikaans.
Ja, nee, hij wil zoek je aanzetten.
Ja. I was thinking of cartoons, right, in Afrikaans. And also, onze mensen vertellen beste jokes. So that is something to look at realistically. That is something that you will remember, never mind what the language je praat. As hulle vir jou gesê het, hy Boeta het hy teëgesluit met 'n kaparang op labarang. Almal onthou hy vir die res van sy lewe.
That's so true.
That's foundation phases to start at for kids to start saying that things and they become familiar with the sayings of the old. Yeah. If I can put it that way.
It's quite interesting because I read something where one of the techniques people used to revive the culture was by using memes. And they found instead of giving long lectures, they just give memes and people are attracted to memes and it worked. And this is a good thing, I agree with you. Shukran for that.
Assalamu alaikum, goedemiddag allemaal. Ik is Anshaaf Hendricks en I'm representing SAMA, South African Muslim Authors and Artists Association. On my right sits Zurera Javalanda and my left Karima Talib Davidson, author, and we do poetry. Very honored to be here this afternoon. And yes, at age 8, I just want to say I couldn't speak Afrikaans. And then Isra Jacobs also there as well. Sorry, Isra. So yes, I always hear that we blame the youth and having youth children. You know, I watched something very interesting this morning. I sent it to Thuria. It's Afrikaans boerdemeisje en sy praat van moer, ek's die moer in. And says, you know, she's very famous on Facebook and such. So haar pa het 'n winkel, dis Mieliepap. En sy doen nou die marketing promotion. So it is baie lekker and it's fun. So let's make everything fun for our children. You know, it's boring. You know, let's stop complaining the youth. They're not here because hulle sê die ou mense is net boring. Ons moet nie met daai groep wees nie. So ons wil hê dat ons, as ons dit moet praat en sê, hoe gaan het met jou vandaag, hoe vaar? And you know, there's different levels of Afrikaans and Engels mingles. I can actually save your life on the Cape Flats. Ask me, I'm in Q-Town, Western Cape, South Africa, in Athlone. And so as ek nou miskien in een taxi is, dis net swart mense, as ek gachi nou is, sê, gachi, het so lekker if jy klein word in Afrikaans, sê, but you white, to say, nee, I'm colored. I'm Cape colored apparently according to South African law. And then nou lag hulle nou reën dat ek miskien met my coat en my syrup en my hoekie, en dan sê, dan moet ek nou Afrikaans praat vir hulle, om te sê, okay, sy is van die Cape Flat, sy is van die Kaap af. So with all that said, you know, let's spread positive energy amongst ourselves and just go forward and also supporting our authors and artists and poetry. Shukran so much. Baie dankie baie.
Shukran. Okay, een laatste persoon. Conrad, are you still going to say something after? Ja. Gaan nog die mensen kans geven, maar ik wil zo lang beginnen. Oké, goed, oké. Oh, mijn andere vrienden wat ik gezien heb bij hier ISICA conference. Ja. Mevrouw, waar is die mic? Misschien voor mij, mic, hè? Oh, Maaf, ik denk dat je wil praten. Sorry, Maaf. Okay, carry on.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Tasneem Daniels. I'm a writer, poet, radio producer in Cape Town. Very big on the Cape Muslim vernacular. Ik praat Engels mijn eerste taal, maar obviously Afrikaans is the language of my collective identity, and that's also why I write in the language. So I was listening very carefully to everyone, and I think that one of the main things that I personally feel very firmly about is making all the conversations around heritage in Afrikaans a living thing, not just a historical thing. So this is what we try to do at Muslim Poet Society. Kharia and I and a couple others are going to perform tomorrow at Voice of the Cape at 2 o'clock in the Tea Garden, Athlone Stadium. It's all about, you know, making Afrikaans and making poetry and making it a living thing. And this is how we do it via poetry. But there's lots of ways to do it, and education is one of them as well. I really do believe that Muhammad Alexander's book Dictionary of the Loanwords should be incorporated into the Afrikaans curriculum, where young children can write exams in Afrikaans and write sentences in the exams in the Cape Muslim Afrikaans vernacular, and that should be counted, that should be graded and counted as part of a metric system within the Afrikaans curriculum. I do believe that the Dictionary of the Loanwords has that potential to be all that. Yeah, shukran. It was really good engaging today. Shukran. Terima kasih banyak.
Maar kan je niet zeggen, nog één vraag, because dit gaan ons inhalen, want als we nog gewoon niet één praat over Arabic Afrikaans, voor ons nou, ons gaan op een voorklok klaarmaken nou, en dan Conrad van de Afrikaanse Taalraad gaat misschien nadenken, net gewoon iets zeggen. Maar voor wie is nou ook nee, mijn vriend van ISICA.
Assalamu wa rahmatullah. Amir Adams of the MSA, the Muslim Students Association of the University of Western Cape. Buddha Muhammad Alexander will remember me from the ISICA conference, of course, and I repeat the same thing that I said there that day, and that is, where is the youth? Maar also young men, because all the people, as Buddha Muhammad Alexander emphasized by the OCAF conference also, are mostly over, I won't mention the age, but mostly over a certain age. So in order to preserve this beautiful legacy as well as our Kaapse style Afrikaans, we have to ensure and make it known that this is basically a language of resilience. And once the youth know that, then inshallah they'll be willing to continue this language, and it won't be seen to be a language of the old Testaments, die putas wat net kofias met die kwasdra and so forth. But in conclusion, just to conclude also, we as the youth, alhamdulillah, and many people made reference to this, and that is we should continue, for example, by making memes. Many times during COVID, as President Ramaphosa, for example, the family meetings gehad. Then they would post, for example, a meme of Ramaphosa with a rooi koffie, then it says hier under, ek kry vir julle agter Maghrib, agter julle klaargesombynes and so. So in that way, we can keep this style and culture and language of Afrikaans alive amongst the youth. And also, there are certain terms, like the Buddha made example of, for example, kaparangs is now outdates. So some of the terms might die out. However, there are certain terms that will remain with us till the day of Qiyamah. Die Bilal gaat nog altyd bang tot Qiyamah dag. there will always be janazas till Qiyamah Day, and therefore referencing words like kubus and Bilal Bang will always be there. So those few terms that we can keep on to, let us hold on to it, inshallah, because that will show the determination of us as youth specifically, not only the elders, but more so us as youth, those who are in university, high school, that we are willing to continue the beautiful legacy left behind by our forefathers and keep this going, inshallah, for the next generations to come. Baie terima kasih.
Very nice that the youth. You see, today's thing, even if we don't find anything, no resolution, you see, never underestimate the power of planting a seed. And that seed hopefully will germinate and turn to something. But this is a starting point, hopefully, inshallah, and hope that this will now germinate into something over time. Een van die lecturers by Siput, is ek 'n klomp grade van linguïstiek grade agternaam.
Assalamu alaikum. I think I'll start speaking now. I was literally sitting here and thinking I'm ticking off like a list of 20 things I want to say. I reduced it to probably 4. So this is really very heartwarming and very necessary. So just in short, I'd like to mention that there's so many heads of organizations, movements, activists that's fighting your same fight. And I think in order for this to really make waves, you need to unite. You really have to. Don't shoot down youngster CPT, I'm sorry. He speaks to a certain genre of people. He speaks to a certain type of people that likes a certain genre, but they're all our people. The other thing I wanted to mention is you mentioned something about Awe Salute. It's not ours, it is ours. I can sit here and I can have a conversation with somebody that's Ambela. I come from Menenberg. I lived there 22 years of my life. Right? So I think that in order to move forward, we should not have the separatist approach. And what perhaps you wouldn't understand is that what happens on ground level is in 1,000-fold on the academic level. So whether you're an ordinary person, and I'd like to think even me attempting a doctorate in linguistics and my focus is CAPS, I'm busy describing CAPS linguistically. This is the work that I'm doing. And I'm doing it for all of you, and I'm doing it for my late father. And I remember when I was doing interior decorating at the time, and he was talking to this young guy, whiz-kid, but a white guy. And my father speaking in his best Afrikaans, and I'm looking, Here gee die man 'n 2 liter Coke, hy seker dorsal. But al die R's and all die, I'm like, Daddy, relax, he's a boy. Meneer, I say, I do it for my father so that they can be proud of the language that they've been indoctrinated as a slave, uncivilized language. But it starts with all of us. I was listening to a couple of speakers, still, how can I say, like somebody said hoikies or something. And I'm like, we don't say hoikies, we say hoochies. So if you want the youth to be proud, we've got to be proud first. We've got to use our language as we speak it, and for the moment there is no orthography. And I really would like to invite you to dismantle the idea of getting somebody from Indonesia to come and document how we speak, because it should come from us.
Understood what I meant by that. I say when you see most of the words are derived from Malay words, and over time the words evolved and it changes in meaning. For example, you get the original Malay word like jamban and we use it jamang. You get kafan and we use it kafang, and it changed, it evolved over time.
And you do know this is a process of all languages.
Yeah, no, I know that.
And it's normal. And for somebody early on, Mark, that said about some terminology that's going extinct, it is replaced with other things. It's not just that we need to hold and preserve the old words. Let's look at how we're using our now words. This is more important. This is a point of departure for us to start working towards. You know, so it's really very heartwarming and very, very necessary. But I think such things should be closer collaborated with the academic world as well, because it's not disjointed. There's so much research that is done on CAPS. It's insatiable, the research, mostly in social linguistics, and you go and read up about yourselves. It's not just in comical or jovial language, it's not just in gedigte, it's not just in little minor storybooks or on memes. There's solid research. We have Europeans coming to investigate us. I got, and I'll really announce this publicly, I basically got thrown out of a Belgium university because I would not write about our people how they tell me to write. I sacrificed a very, very lucrative bursary because I would not be dictated that a foreigner comes and tells me that how colored people speak has no salience. And how colored people code switch has no salience. I don't know if anybody knows what that means. It means that it's got no importance. No linguist or anybody that studies languages has a right or even, I mean, there's not even a concept to say that people's communicating has no salience. So as we leave, I really would invite you for you to start being proud of your own language. And this is going to show through, even like when I write emails. Is Rashida your daughter? Oh, yeah, so she's in my class and she invited me. I'm really grateful for her inviting me here today. So she will know that as the communications lecturer, I say, speak the way you speak. I will make deliberate, stupid mistakes, speaking different accents I can come up with, because no accent or no version of a language is more important than the other. Language are there to establish relationships, communicate meaning, blah, blah, blah. And how do you do it? When someone understands what you're saying. So why not? Start writing it up when you write WhatsApp. I look at my mom, she's 74 years old. She's got Parkinson's disease, but she's going to write, gekom het. I'm going to write, gekorret. My friends in Belgium is starting to speak. My Christian friends all know the wax. That's why don't bring the separatism in caps, because you can have, like you even mentioned yourself as well, like you can have a conversation with a Christian colored person and they will understand salam. They're the first ones to greet you, salam, salam, as amper bukatek, you know, and this is the beauty. It's not a dysfunction of caps, it's the beauty of caps, of caps. Even if you look at, sorry, I know I'm talking a lot, but I'm very passionate about this. If you look at Funny Caps Facebook page, you will see that they still write very much how we were taught that is a proper Afrikaans. So people, when you go home and chat, and someone send a Caps message right now, and this is how we're going to popularize it ourselves. Right? So that's my 5 minutes.
Ja, all op in besig, alhamdulillah, ons president Ali all op nou se maak besig vol.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, baas Mike, maar maaf Thys gou daar.
Ja, ek sal maar try om te probeer in Engels praat.
Nie praat Afrikaans, ons hou van Afrikaans.
Okay, nou goed, laat ek dit nou maar in my Noord-Kaapse Afrikaans sê. Wat nou hier reg deurloop deur al die gesprekke is die trots. Dat 'n mens moet trots wees op wie hy is. En die probleem van ons jong mense, hulle het 'n probleem met identiteit. They want to fit in. En om in te pas, dan verander jy nou volgens die omstandighede rondom jou. Ek meen, my kinders het in die Kaap groot geword. Maar hulle praat, sê nou maar my Afrikaans, maar as ek daar is, dan sê ek sê my broer, hoe is dit op jou? Verstaan jy? Want hulle wil infit, they want to fit in. En as ons vir jong mense laat verstaan, you know, let them understand that they have to be proud of the language. Islam se sukses het afgehang van die Effendi broers wat begin het om die Koran en die lesse in Afrikaans, Arabies te skryf. Met ander woorde, daai taal wat mense nou minag, was verantwoordelik vir die verspreiding van Islam. Van kindsbeen af. En baie van ons wat hier sit, ek bedoel my moslim vriende, het opgegroei in die taal. Hulle is waardes geleer. Ons het nie waardes in ons kinders meer nie, omdat ons hulle nie daai woorde wat ons vir altyd geleer het, wat waardevol is, geleer het nie. So ek wil net dit sê, ek wil ook sê wat die curriculum betref, ons die taalraad is besig om met die onderwysdepartemente te onderhandel oor hoe om die variëteite van Afrikaans in die syllabus ook te weergee. So dit is absoluut belangrik. Ons is besig daarmee. Ek praat nie 'n taal van onderdrukking nie, ek praat die taal van bevryding. Dis die taal van Anton Frans, dis die taal van Ashley Kriel, dis die taal van al hierdie bevrydingsstryders wat gestry het om ons land te bevry. So ons moenie dink, dis die taal van 'n onderdrukker nie. Ek het nooit, en my studente, en dit sluit onder andere ook vir Anton Frans in, het ek Afrikaans geleer. En hy het Afrikaans komryd gesterf in Athlone. Afrikaans, wat is die moslimkore as daar nie Afrikaans is nie? Stel je voor, die duisende mense wat by die moslimkore gaan sing, as daar nie Afrikaans is nie, daar is daar nie kore nie. Ek bedoel, Rosa, ag dame, praat Nederlands, maar dis waar Afrikaans vandaan kom. Ons moet net beklemtoon, Afrikaans het eers by die moslimgemeenskap ontstaan. Ons mense moet dit net verstaan dat ons is verantwoordelik vir die ontstaan van hierdie variëteit wat hulle nou Afrikaans noem. We are responsible for that, and as such we should instill it in our children that what we talk is the language, a new language, the only language with Africa in its name. Ja, laat ek maar eers daar oploop, anders gaan ek nou te lang.
We sien al die emosie. Kan dit gou vir Geria gee? Dan na die moet eerst tyd gaan ons vang nie so. Tot Konrad Steenkamp na die. Okay. Karima, okay, goed.
Okay, I'm Karima Talib Davids. This is my book, Diversity. So this is the latest one. I've got 2 other books for children. Ek is 'n bietjie by skaam, so ek is nie gewoon die doen nie. As die 2 wat my so druk om almal die dinge te doen. Ja, so dit is Kaapse kultuur ook en al die religions en al die colors van die kinders, so wat hulle moet leer. So die boek gaan in Afrikaans geskryf word ook. Diversity. Afrikaanse kultuur.
Ja, gaan daar shukran vir hy Karima. Kan ek op gereageer kan hulle? Dit is nou en dan na die Dr. Konrad Steenkamp. Oh, maar kan we ook nog.
Assalamu alaikum vir die mense wat nou later ingekom het. Ek wil net kortliks 'n paar goedjies sê. So ek doen nou al werkswinkels met Kaaps. Ever since ek moes nou discover ek sound actually Kaaps. Het ek werkswinkels begin in my local area. Ek het nou net in 2 weke terug McGregor toe gegaan met kinders wat in Kaaps inskryf. En ons praat nie net van Kaaps, ons praat van Magnolia's Afrikaans in die area wat ek bly, so waar ek bly en waar hulle bly, is 2 different dialects in any case. Wat ek wil sê is dat first of all, die kinders het 'n need om te skryf. So as baie writers as mense met stories wat hulle wil vertel, groot mense. Ek het students van 9 tot soos 80 jaar oud wat hulle stories vertel. Dit is punt nommer 1, which means die need is daar vir stories, die need is daar vir uitrol en die need is daar vir language converse in literature form. En dis ook ek kom hier vandaan want ek's 'n poet, ek is 'n skrywer, dis waar my hart lê, dis waar ek sien die change het begin. Dit is 'n ding. Die tweede ding is dat wat as ons het mense wat so enthousiast word om te skryf in die vernacular of die dialect wat ons nou hier discuss en hulle gaan na die feeste wat toe ek met Tasneem praat of iets nie van die Prins Albert Vleesfees, these festivals wat ek gaan because ek het bietjie 'n doorway in die white writing world gekry. Alhamdulillah. Maar wat het my daar geleer het is dat ek kan wat ons het gaan daar en ek kan daar ook gaan vertel in voorbeelde in die literatuur wys van hoe ons praat en culture en so aan. Hierdie boek het ek en my oom en my nog 'n paar ander familielede. Ek kom promote dit, ek wil dit net aan die hand van wys. Die is wat hy doen. En ek het vir hom jare gesê, Boetalemin, kom maar klaar, ons moet die ding vat because people have to see it. Wat ek probeer sê vir almal is, daar is 'n platform available vir ons om dit te vat. Die man wat die fees organise, het vir hom gesê, stuur hy goed vir my op e-mail, ek wil dit opplak hier, laat die mense dit kan sien. Because die Afrikaans is daar en die Arabic Afrikaans is daar. Because they are interested. Which means die need en die lus is klaar daar onder die mense. Die jong mense is klaar lus om hulle heritage te claim. Die jong mense is klaar available en ready om te skryf in whatever mother tongue hulle min gewoond is. Ek het 4 tale in my. En ek skryf in Afrikaans, Engels, Kaaps en nou die nuutste taal wat op my tong en papier gekom het is die Cape Muslim vernacular. Maar het liewe in my lankal, ek sê vir julle in ons ore van ons kinders is klaar die sounds. Ons moet net vir hulle die papier gee om dit nou neer te sit en guide, that's all. Want dit is daar, soos ons sê het aan die bos het hulle het geleer. So daar is al wat ons doen, maar imagine, ons vat vir hulle na allemaal die festivals, soos wat ek nou 12 youngsters gevat het, vir die 3de jaar, na 'n fees in McGregor, waar predominantly Engels is, en ons daar Afrikaans establish, en nie net die Afrikaans nie, maar die variety van Afrikaans, want in die 12 skryf allemaal different, ek skryf Kaaps, en nou skryf ek die Cape Muslim vernacular, en hulle skryf Magnolia's Afrikaans, away my massa kan, want hulle was gangsters geweest voor die. The point is, the platform is there. So die question vorig was geweest, ja nou, hoe gaat ons maak? Thuis wat sy maak, te werk in jou hub, aan jou cirkel. En het gaat aan, en so en thuis, hulle weer iemand anders. Ze werk net in jou hub, is al wat ze doen. That's what I've been doing for years. En nou gee ek workshops hierop, en ek laat die mense skryf in whatever authenticity hulle in hulle het. However it falls on the page, dat is die legacy wat hulle neersit. En ja, anyway, that.
Is die laaste persoon te come in now? Gaan ons na Dr. Conrad Steenkamp.
Okay, Assalamu alaikum. Good afternoon. I'm not speaking as a poet or as a writer or in terms of literacy. Can everyone hear me? What I want to convey to all of you is that when the slaves brought this language from across the Indian Ocean, this language survived up to today, but it was acclimatized, it was creolized and adjusted and accommodated the African landscape. And the words, as inherited words, or survived. So it wasn't pure Malay that survived up to today, but it was, amongst others, Malay speakers that were brought into the country, and the legacy language that they left behind was kept alive by our African-born Afro-Malays and Afro-Mozambicans from all over the east coast of the Swahili Empire, from India, from Malaysia, from Indonesia, in terms of the current terminology of describing those states, those modern day states. But from the East Indies, amongst others, the result is this dictionary of foreign language, loan words. And this book is a bridge builder between the past and the future. So I want to take you to the future. When Ahmad Davids wrote about Afrikaans, it was in the time that the language was known as our oppressor's language, and then also from a very Verwoerdian lens and a European lens, that this language is a white man's language. So Ahmad Davids was never popular when he was on platforms. When I was at high school and at varsity, Ahmad Davids was not popular because he championed the language as the language of the people. He was giving the language a future that it's an inclusive language, a language that comes from everybody that contributed towards the existence of Afrikaans as is it known today. So the future of Afrikaans is going to change all the time. And what I can say to you, all of you, is the language is going to be kept alive by the people on the ground. Remember in the 1880s, with the Afrikaner language movement, all the Afrikaners that were striving to be middle class abandoned the language. And the Taal movement, one of the Taal movement fathers said, the only people that was loyal to Afrikaans and keeping it intact and allowing it to thrive were the Kaapse Malayers. Saying again It is not the rich people, it's not the people that have access to politicians, it's not the people that have access to publishing houses that kept the language alive. Those are only supporting structures. But keeping the language alive comes from people with the heart and love for the language. Even today, Afrikaners are going overseas because they say the language is being threatened, the existence of Afrikaans is being threatened. But they go to Perth and their children grow up in an English environment. But they left South Africa because they said there's no future for them. But they never said there's no future for Afrikaans. They left that to all of us. They left the future of Afrikaans in the hands of the people that they left behind. So the language is going to change over time. We don't have any control over the language, how it's being shaped. But what I do pick up today is the language dynamics are being politicized here. People are asking now, do you want this language to be preserved as a language of the past? And I'm saying to you, we that are in South Africa are responsible for the future of this language. And Ahmad Davids, with his vision, he broadened the roots and the origin of the language by pointing out words made by slaves. So he created a future for the language. And I want all of you to take inspiration and encouragement from that. That the language is going to be reshaped. We don't have any control over a living language. It may end up with a few or more Xhosa words for that matter in the Western Cape, because the demographics of the Western Cape changes and therefore it will impact on the language. So I want to conclude with that particular aspect, and that is, it's not the powerful and not the rich that have kept Afrikaans that we know, that kept it alive. And I want also, it's important that it must be made clear to the current generation of millennials. When my brother was in Rahmania, in Sub-A, the school teacher wrote bottle, and they asked him to pronounce it, and he pronounced what my grandmother, who went to school in Hollands, and he said to the teacher, that diagram or illustration, it means borrel. And the teacher told him, is wrong. And we didn't know that we are being taught classroom Afrikaans and not the language of our homes. So that distinction between the various variants or dialects of Afrikaans as real languages on the street must be brought home to a new generation. Otherwise, we will always think that Afrikaans is the language of the slaves and therefore should be marginalized to the kitchen as a kitchen language. And the writing of the poems and the novels, that will bring Afrikaans as we know it back into the mainstream. I thank you.
En nou is nou net tot te kon rastem oorbly nou. Sit my so laat ek sien my opinie.
Kijk mensen, ik verstaan is amper 4 uur, né? So ek sal baie vinnig praat, I'll be quick about this. I feel just like that lady over there. There's so much was said here every time you want to jump up and say something. Because it's clear, the important thing is it's clear that there's energy here. Without energy, one can't do this thing. So, I was asked to say, what can the Taalraad do? Now, first of all, the Taalraad can't do anything. It's the speakers that will do the thing. What the Taalraad can do is to provide technical support. We have a network. We promote, just by the way, we don't promote Afrikaans. We promote Afrikaans in all its varieties. Afrikaans in sy volle diversiteit. Ek dink byvoorbeeld dat hierdie beweging wat hier so begin ontstaan, waarde kan trek uit UNESCO se benadering tot language vitality. I think we need a meeting at which one can discuss the UNESCO's language framework. It shows one how to analyze your language to determine what is the level of endangerment. And then on the basis of that to decide what should one do. You mentioned a lot of things, and most of those things, actually I think the UNESCO guys wasted their time. You mentioned most of those things. So I'm very impressed actually, because it means people have been thinking about this. So the only other value I can add to this today without taking you too close to 4 o'clock is to offer this book, but that would mean you need to put some money into my pocket. This is a history of Afrikaans, an inclusive history of Afrikaans, which was put together on, we asked Christoph van Rensburg to put this together, a well-known linguist. So anybody who wants a copy of this, you have a few minutes to come and get it. We have about 10, I have about 10 copies here. Folks, so my suggestion is we come together and we talk about a clear framework, because this requires a program, not just a project, one needs a program. But people, from my heart, ek is baie beïndruk en ek dink hier gaan dinge gebeur. Ek wens julle almal geluk.
No, no. Thing is, Alamin, is jou gedig, lees het maar uit.
As mens sien wie skrokke dan?
Ja, ek sien dit.
Die dae van Subain en Gadat, Slawat en Barakat, Bachai en Tamat, Mani en Abdas, Ratib en Amantu Ablas, Hufa, Krislam en Salam. Ja, dit was die dae van Subuh, Sawa en Puasa. Hoe verlang ek na die verlore dae. Die dae van Abuya en Umi, Panki en Ukhti, Tuang en Nain, Ami en Amati, Buka en Bilalbang. Ja, dit was die dae van troue en Gabar. Hoe verlang ek na die verlore dae. Pinang, curry en geelrys, broodporring en melktere, denningvleis en Afrikaner curry, smoorvleis en baboti, boeber en curryballs, 'n merang en porring. Ja, dit was die dae van watlamboen en vye konfyt. Hoe verlang ek na die verlore dae. Rampiesny en jikke, misval, modering en midouras, sorban, juba en kufia, Hollandse liedjies en jikkes, maningel, malboots, antifights, Salamse skool en les op sê, ja, dit was die goeie ou dae waarna ons moet kyk.
Net die laaste ding, ons veronderstel om die ding in 2 helftes te deel. Die tweede helfte was veronderstel om te wees oor Arabisch-Afrikaans. Maar dit gaat ons natuurlijk nog niet toelaten om hy te bespreken, maar net so for what it's worth, om iets te noemen dat, voor die wat dan niet bewust is van Arabisch-Afrikaans, what is Arabic Afrikaans? Arabic Afrikaans is a writing system used by the early Malays, where they used the Arabic script to write in Afrikaans. At the time, the people couldn't read the Roman script, but they were able to read the Arabic script for religious requirements, and those imams at the time, they then used the Arabic script to write in Afrikaans. So if you read it, you read Afrikaans, but in the very first Afrikaans, according to most historians, the first Afrikaans was written using this writing system. And there's another thing to add to this. They didn't write Arabic English, they wrote Arabic Afrikaans. Because at the time, the name, the word Afrikaans can be debated because at the time, Alphobius, the name given by Alphobius was Arab Hollands. Kaaps Hollands, maar hulle gesê Arab Hollands. And then, of course, the name Arabic Afrikaans was a name given by a researcher of this writing system, and he coined the word of Arabic Afrikaans, and his name stuck now. Maar die ou mense, die ou het gebruik, Theo Adrianus van Selms, he was researching and he coined this word of Arabic Afrikaans, but our forebears used the word Arab Hollands. Because het Hollands by tyd het gewees, dat was die Afrikaans. Die Afrikaans is mens nader, en dat is ook een hele debat om te sê, wat is dat precies Afrikaans? Is dat in Hollands, waar het Afrikaans geword nou is? Maar dit gaan natuurlijk voor ons toelaten om nou uit te bespreken. One of the things I actually wanted to know is all these literary treasures left behind by our forebears deserves more praise and deserves to be kept alive because it's unique to us, part of our culture, part of our heritage. And one of the things that we were supposed to discuss is it a good thing to revive this writing system? And here also I have to thank the Afrikaanse Taalraad for trying to preserve this part of our culture with their competitions that they have every year. Every year the taal, for those who do not know, the Afrikaanse Taalmuseum, sorry, not Taalraad, Afrikaanse Taalmuseum have this Arabic Afrikaans competitions. And Dr. Samiga also, for what it's worth, they had a workshop there in Paul. And one of the exciting things was the greater majority of people who attended were Afrikaans people. We had a problem with during the last competition, the attendance people who took part was so poor, it was kind of embarrassing. I even asked people, you get the Afrikaans Taal Museum, a non-Muslim organization trying to preserve a part of our culture. And whatever they do, they promote it, pay for it, whatever. And only thing we wanted from the Cape Malays is to show pride and participate. And I even use the word, if you can read Arabic, you'll be able to write it. You don't have to freehand, do it. Die mense stiek net die uit hulle stel. Even with the Arabic Afrikaans, we had a workshop there in Paul, and Samiga was actually having that thing, and the majority of people, again, mostly non-Malays, there's something wrong there, something needs to be rectified, and whenever we're going to have a next Arabic Afrikaans, if you can read Arabic Afrikaans, you can read Arabic, try your best to participate. Another thing is, if you can master this and introduce this writing system into schools and get schools to perhaps write poetry, a school against inter-school poetry in Arabic Afrikaans, and just to promote this, in a process, the younger generation will learn the art of writing Arabic because there's a certain format to write Arabic. So, writing out Arabic Afrikaans, they don't have to need to be able to know the Arabic language. No, all you need to know how to use the script. And in the last chapter of the book that I published there was a proposed alphabet where first the alphabet and the second part was all the new additional diphthongs to suit contemporary Afrikaans. And I was elated and surprised and glad when Dr. Samiga Chowdhury kind of endorsed my alphabet, and because I was worried it was going to gun me because we have so many armchair critics and very little doers. So it didn't happen. Instead, I got accepted. So something started. The moment you start something, we can just carry on as opposed to having nothing. So but this needs to be. Perhaps in another program, what can we do to revive this writing system, to get it to instill pride, since this was the first Afrikaans, to get into school, write poetry, and whatever goes with that. But with this, inshallah, alhamdulillah, this is where we stop. We plan on having it at 4 o'clock, and it's exactly 4 o'clock. But what I wanted to say, it will be so nice everyone has my email address, or the email address I used to send the emails out. It'll be nice if people can come together, even not monthly or so, just to discuss the way forward. What can we do after this now? Because it's nice to have more than one. You know, in the old time they talk about mashura. It's nice to have mashura to discuss things. And it opens up your mind to other people's opinions as opposed to one person. So it will be nice, whoever's interested, to be part of a group. Let's call it, at the moment, I am a one-person organization for the preservation of the Cape Muslim heritage. It'll be nice if there can be more people, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 people being part of this. You don't have to, I know everyone is extremely busy, but if you can at least meet either once a month or second month to decide the way forward, what can be done, how can you implement this in schools, whatever, and at least be part of it via email. And if I send out email, okay, this is what the group decided, but it would be nice, whoever is interested in being part of this group in the preservation of this culture heritage, then send me an email, Kanala, on the thing, then we can take it from there. And I appreciate this, all the people, all of you who are taking the time out to be here, because everyone is very busy. And shukran so much. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين الحمد لله رب العالمين. شكرا so much. Ek weet of nog kos oor is. I'm so afraid.